probably as well. Okay, so I'll first introduce myself. I'm Miranda. I haven't put that on the presentation because I thought, well, I'm here anyway. I'm Miranda. I'm a Spanish teacher at a secondary school in Hilversum, which is a town very close by. And this is the name of the school. For those who don't speak Dutch, don't even try. But I'll say it once. It's called Alberdink Thijm College. And at my location, we have the HAVO, VWO, and the gymnasium. For those who don't know it, I'll explain it later on. And I will tell you something about my exchanges, and I'll probably address some of the questions that have already been asked, because I'm a Spanish teacher, so that's directly your question. So I'll be telling something about the exchanges I did. I'll be telling something about the tools we used, the challenges we encountered, and also the advantages of doing such a telecollaboration. And then finally, something I thought was very important. What does it bring me and what does it bring my students? I haven't brought any, unfortunately, because I thought there were coming a lot of students, so I'll just leave mine in school. That's what they like. Yes, so as I said, I teach Spanish, and at my school, they start doing Spanish starting in the 2nd grade. So depending on which level they do, they get classes from the 2nd until possibly the 6th or the 5th grade. Spanish at this moment at my school, because a lot is going to change, but I'll stick to the current situation, is an obligatory but elective. So they choose between Spanish or German. Why is that important? Because I did one of the exchanges, I actually do two, with the 3rd grade. So they have chosen Spanish, but it's kind of a either or choice. So the exchange we did, I did with 2 groups. As you can see in the picture here, I'll move a lot and I'll talk very quickly. So yeah, okay. We have the levels over here. So we have HAVO, which is somewhere in the middle. Then we have VWO, which is a bit higher for those who don't know the Dutch schooling system. And then we have another, gymnasium, which has the extra Greek and Latin. The first exchange I did with the gymnasium group, which are in the 3rd grade, so they're in the lower secondary education, the lower secondary levels, I'm sorry. And then I did one with HAVO, which is a 4th grade, so a pre-exam year. And as you probably can see from the image, those 2 levels, they differ quite a lot in motivation, in the way students want to do things, in various aspects. Both of the exchanges were Spanish-English exchanges. Why is that? That is because there's practically no one in Europe who wants to learn Dutch. So we had to resort to Spanish students wanting to learn English, and then my Dutch students who were taught Spanish being the experts in English, as their levels are generally a lot higher than the English levels in Spain, being the expert on English and learning Spanish from the Spanish students. As you can imagine, that brings some challenges with it. For example, the Spanish students being Spanish, I don't know if there. First, another question. Are there any teachers in here so I can see what kind of audience I'm confronted with? Okay, so can I ask some of you, what would your students know as metacognitive knowledge about Dutch? Or what would you know? So what, if your students, what do you teach? English. If they had to explain Dutch to English students, would they be able to do that?
Not as such, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Obviously, they'll explain words, but the language at the level, depending on which age group, but in general, no.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, good answer. Because that's actually one of the problems we encountered, and I'll come back to that later during the exchanges, because Spanish students are Spanish. So it's their native language, their first language. So they have to talk their first language to a group that is on a A1 plus A2 level. So it's very hard for them to imagine what the other group is capable of, what they know, what they don't know, and what terms you can use and what things you can't. So that was one of the challenges we had right away. But then again, one of the advantages of this sort of, the exchange we did is that my students, they feel very proficient in English, and they notice that their English isn't as high as their own English. So then they thought, oh, well, my English is better. Look what they do and look what I can do. And then the problems they encountered for their Spanish, paired with the Spanish of the natives, wasn't that important anymore. So they learned that even though they had some difficulties expressing themselves, it didn't matter that much. So they felt comfortable by knowing the others could learn from them. So both groups were experts as well as beginners. And that, I think, is a really interesting situation also for my students. So they feel confident, and then they feel like they can learn something from the other group. Oh, yeah, sorry. It was this or holding the microphone, so I prefer. But then, okay. So, as I said, I had a group which is Gymnasium 3, which are students who are approximately 13 to 14 years old. And then I had a half of year, a fourth grade, who are, well, 1 year older, so they should be 14, 15, and some of them maybe 16. We did all the tasks at school. Why is that? Because that's the policy of my school. We do the homework in school. That has positive and negative sides. Why? Because it's one group. I have a group of approximately 20 students in both the fourth and the third grade. So I wanted to let them all join. But then again, that also has some challenges. On the other side, as you said, for the question about French and German, how do you do that? Because my third level students aren't that proficient yet. It was for me and for them also, very comfortable to be around and to be able to ask questions they have about what is he saying? What should I do? How should I answer? So on the one hand, it's a challenge orchestrating all the 20 students in the same classroom. And on the other hand, it's very safe. I can guide what they are doing. I can help them get along. I can help them get through. So that was the same for the HAVO. So we all did the tasks we had in class. The conditions for that, however, are very important to take in mind. My school, fortunately, is very advanced in the technological area. So each of the students has their own personal MacBook. We have a very good Wi-Fi network, which are very important because if you're working with technology, and especially the tools I'll be talking about later, it's very important that these things are all set and done. So, the tools we used. I've put up some images because I thought I mentioned some tools would already have been mentioned and others would not have been. We did various tasks, but they weren't as structured maybe as the tasks you've already heard about. So for both groups, we started with an introduction, so getting to know each other. We did that mostly with the Padlet tool. So both groups, both the HAVO and the Gymnasium, would prepare their presentations about themselves in class. So I could help them so they could do it on their own tempo, on their own conditions. They could include whatever they want. They could exclude whatever they wanted as well. And they did put that on a Padlet wall. I will later show an image of one of those exchanges we had. So the first task, getting to know each other, was very not confronting at all. So they could easily prepare the task. The other group that would then respond, because my students would do it in Spanish, they would respond either in Spanish as well or in English, responding to the message. And then there was a conversation going, which wasn't all the time a synchronous conversation because the other students didn't always have time. But then we would asynchronously do the tasks so everyone could do in their own time add the information we wanted or needed. We also did, I don't think you've heard of that one before, a Voki, which was an idea of Eileen's. And a Voki is also a tool we used in combination with the Padlet, and we did a task about Christmas. So the students, my students, would get something, would present something about their Christmas and would ask in exchange information about the Christmas of the other group. So they prepared a Voki, which is, as you can see here, some kind of an avatar, which you can make. So the students went on making their own crazy images of people and puzzle pieces and I don't know what. And they either spoke or typed in a message and then sent that to the other groups. Both the tools are very low, very non-confrontative, if that's a word even. So which means they felt really safe in the classroom. They had time to think about what they wanted to say. They had time to think about their responses. And it was a very safe one. After that, we did a task in the virtual world. And I think you've seen that one before today, probably a few times. So we'll not spend too much time on that. But they, as a group, after doing the Padlets, they went in the virtual world and they had the task, okay, look at the names of the other students and try to find the partner you're coupled with. I'll tell something about that later on because I think there is some really interesting things to tell about that. I'll first continue with the other two, which is the Big Blue Button, which you've also already heard today, which is a kind of Skype-ish video conferencing tool where you can also upload your presentations and you can also chat. So that will be it for the tools. Then the challenges. As we had to do everything at school, it was very difficult sometimes to find a corresponding time slot. So that's why we resorted sometimes to asynchronous communication, and other times we had a corresponding time slot, so we did a synchronous communication. Also, as I said, my school is very advanced on the technological area, but you can't always expect that of your partners. So, for example, we later on in the partnership found out that one of my partners couldn't use the virtual world in the computers he has at school, so we had to resort to other tools, which wasn't a problem, but it was something we had to deal with. Then again, as I mentioned, I wanted my groups all to participate, but if you have large groups, I have 20 per group, which for over here wouldn't be that big, but I mean for Spanish it's okay. If you have larger groups, it takes a lot of more time and effort to get everything orchestrated, and sometimes it's better to participate in a small group. And also student behavior. I think I've already heard that one as well. How do you prevent students from behaving maybe rudely? Well, unfortunately, that happens if students get frustrated because of technical problems, and it's something you have to manage. Is my time gone? Oh, it was just 5 minutes. Okay, so I have a lot more interesting stuff to tell. Can I say one extra tiny little thing? Okay. Why do I think it's so important? Because I think the students, at the beginning of the year, I asked them, what do you want to do? And they all told me, I want to learn to communicate in Spanish. And what is the thing we don't really usually try to do? Communicate in Spanish in class. So they get a lot of more, tools, how to do that. They get experience, they learn that you don't need to do everything correctly, that you can also make mistakes. It's about the competence and the being able to transmit your message with making mistakes included. Also, they learned something about the other cultures. So via the exchanges, we found out some really interesting things they didn't know about Spain, and we talked about it. So they learn and they know why some people do certain things, and they can explain it from their perspective and then from the other perspective as well. These other ones you've already heard, but then this image is an image of one of the first getting to know each other tasks we did. And I have one student of mine who's really shy. He doesn't want to speak Spanish at all. So he sits in class doing like, I'm the invisible guy, you don't see me at all. And then in the virtual world, he was there. And And the other ones, as you can see, were talking to each other. And he was just around here. He was on top of a building and he was joining the conversation, but from a distance. So I thought, well, if I can get him in the intercultural settings by chatting or by being a bit more distant from the others, then I think I have reached my goals. If you want to know anything more, because my time is gone by really quickly, please talk to me later. I'll be here. So I haven't put my email address on here, but I'll be around, so you can ask that later on as well. Thank you.